Welcome back to Direct Edition, a podcast about nothing and everything. Today, bringing you a big interview. My guest today is Rob Sheridan. I've been following Rob Sheridan's work with starting with Nine Inch Nails in the early 2000s, watching all the live shows that Nine Inch Nails would play that Rob was a part of as creative director and designing a lot of the different elements that you would see on stage, going into all of his endeavors with Trent and beyond. The art that he's created, the comic book he wrote, and now working to design the new beautiful stage show that Pearl Jam has been playing in front of for the last year. And Rob's work has always kind of just been with me in one way, shape, or form. During COVID, he was doing designs for different clothing and the masks that I wore while I was a mailman for USPS. And always just kind of found myself in line with a lot of the causes that he supports. It's just a all-around fascinating artist visually and doing a lot of stuff on the internet as well. So this conversation is long. It's like an hour and 45 minutes. And we kind of touch on all of the different aspects of his career with a lot of different anecdotes and just great stories and such. The kind of insight that I really enjoy bringing to this podcast. So why don't we get started with my interview with Rob Sheridan? Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. Today's a great interview that I'm going to be bringing to you with a special guest who has a career's worth of amazing stuff to talk about, not just a creative and art director for Nine Inch Nails, but designing screen shows for them, designing Pearl Jam's new tour screen shows, Grammy nominated, a comic writer, as well as somebody who created an empire of awesome, amazing apparel based on glitch art. My guest today is Rob Sheridan. Hi, Rob.
Nice to be here. How's it going?
Yeah, nice to have you, even though we're probably somewhere within a 3-mile radius of each other right now.
yeah. Actually, to Tacoma locals.
That's right. And I mean, my setup is not as cool as what's going on behind you, which is just it's a trip to see that.
It's been fun to have this behind me in the Zoom era. So, meet with people and I remember meeting with some art directors for this video game that I worked on. They saw this behind me and they're like, okay, yeah, this is the guy we need. Yes, this is that's exactly what we're looking for. It's nice to have it out in the world now that it's just been my own little personal wall of glitch for a few years.
You could also double as like some type of weird, 80s villain, maybe like some futuristic villain that's in the 80s, but he's talking to people in the future.
It's very much my lair because I'm on the basement floor, and this is just the cyber cave down here where I stay up late making weird experiments. So.
Well, and those experiments have led to some amazing stuff that you've put out into the world in the last 25 years or so. And I want there's so much to go over, and it's funny because we grew up loving the same stuff. We're a month and I think a day apart. I was born November 12th, 79. I think you're October 11th.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Very close.
So I find when, people that are born in the same era, we all pretty much like the same stuff and we're inspired by a lot of the same stuff. And going back, can you remember the first artist that you saw work of that you were like that you could feel that tangibly affected you and maybe started to set you out on the path that you were eventually on?
I mean, I think it goes into like different eras of who I was. When I was a young kid, it was like superhero comics and cartoons like this, comic strips. Bill Watterson and Calvin Hobbes was like a very early thing that I attached onto. And I when I was in grade school, I started drawing little comic strips of my own. And I had a little character named Leroy, and he was suspiciously drawn very similar to Calvin. And he got into some adventures kind of similar to Calvin's, but it was just my way of exploring, that world. And so, Bill Watterson's voice and style and everything is kind of mirror to my own life as an imaginative only child. So I really connected with that early on. And then as I grew older, the types of artists and types of art changed. But, Calvin and Hobbes really made me think about like art as a career, art as storytelling, art as an expression of so many different ideas for the first time, I think, when I was really young.
And, like I said, we're from the same era, and I feel like we might be the last kids that grew up looking at cartoon strips. I mean, I know they still exist, but they were still huge when, I had the Page a Day Far Side calendar, which was
every year. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds so like folksy now. A little thing on your desk, and you pull off one piece of paper a day and see one cartoon. But it was fun. Cool.
But the humor in it was amazing.
Oh yeah, the Far Side was dark. It was great. I loved Far Side. I had all the books and everything. It's somewhere around here, that big one that they compiled like every Far Side.
Oh yeah,
into one giant thing. But we'll be here. We'll be stuck on this the entire time if you can be going on this. But I really do think there's something to our micro generation of like the last era that grew up like old enough to have grown up in the kind of tactile analog offline era, but just young enough to still be a part of the digital era, and not have it be like something that was there our whole lives, but also not be our parents who are, who don't know how to attach a PDF or whatever, So, we came along for the ride, but we're rooted in a childhood that did not exist after our generation.
Right.
And will never again, and people are always like, oh, everything always changes. Every generation says that, but you can point to a very, very different type of change here that's never existed before, which is the internet. Like that's not a normal thing. That's not just we got TV or something. It's a complete rewrite of how society is structured, and how we access media and how culture comes to us and goes from us. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing is up to each person to decide, but we are undeniably the last micro generation to experience it.
Yeah. It's not lost on me to kind of remind myself of that, and in conversation with people to always bring that up, because it's the internet, and it's also cell phones, right? We had and you said we could do this all day, 4 hours of. They will never know what call waiting is. They'll never know what a busy signal sounds like anymore.
I hate it when I say those things. I hate hearing it come out of my mouth. I feel like such a boomer. It just sounds like such a boomer stuff to say. Like, oh, back in my day, we walked 3 miles uphill in the snow. It's really like the more I think about it, the more it's like it's not just a back in my day thing. It's I think we have to look at some of those things and try to take some lessons from them, because it's not like the way that we interact with everything now on our phones and social media and everything. It's not like that's organic. It's not like that was destined to happen. It was the natural flow of things. It's something that happened very fast without anyone really stopping to ask, is this good? Is this bad? Who's making the decisions of how this is affecting us as a society? And being able to reflect on what changed, why, and by who is kind of important when I'm, I've got a kid and I'm looking at how that kid experiences the world and the lenses and who built the lenses that reflect the world back to him. It's worth looking, I think, through that mirror a little bit, not just nostalgically, but critically,
Yes. And those conversations become more and more important literally every hour. I mean, we could just look at what happened in the last 24 hours with a lot of this AI stuff that's getting pushed forward. And I'm even seeing it in emails. I just got an email from a couple of different apps that are talking about integrating AI, and I'm like, okay, I'm unsubscribing from this shit.
Well, my wife, she's gone like totally dark mode on, like, she just like deleted her social media and was like, I'm done. Like, this was and I get it. I feel like I would if I didn't need it for everything I do, but she, she's like, I don't see anything anymore, but I got an email from like one of the normal services that we use for like managing accounts, something, one of those back services. And she's like, look at how this email is written. It reads like doomsday sci-fi, the way it's describing how AI will take all of this stuff, but they're trying to sell you a pitch of what their AI can do, but it sounds apocalyptic the way it's written. Like, well, it was probably written by AI first of all.
Exactly.
And it's weird when the marketing pitches start to sound apocalyptic in their like what they're describing automating, and especially when you having myself spent a lot of time unafraid to explore AI and having a better understanding than apparently most of these companies of what it can actually do and what it can't. Because every day I read some pitch of what they're saying it can do. I'm like, it can't do that unless you want me to spend twice as much time checking the work and at every step.
Yeah.
So
it's terrifying for so much and so many people. And, I can't get a grasp on it. But going back to the back in my day thing, the one thing that I do love that we're all experiencing in one way or another is the stuff that we grew up loving in the physical media world is now on the rise again, because everybody's kind of pushing back against forcing the digital. And I do love that we are seeing VHS and, we're seeing more cassette tapes, and obviously vinyl is, the rebound of vinyl's 25 years old now, but books, comics, all that stuff.
Yeah, but it feels, it feels more like there's a, the rebound of vinyl had its own kind of, identity around sound or whatever back then, but now it's tied in with the rebound of, I see people doing, I'm actually making some imagery for a friend's CD release right now, and another friend's cassette release, and I just put out a VHS, so just a little like homemade little art project one, but what you see, I think, is just people like yearning for the friction of the way we used to interact with media, that forces you to engage with it with more senses, to spend more time with it, to just connect with it a little bit more, and not only in terms of how you experience the media that's on it, but also I think just on a sensory level. Like, I always felt this way, obviously, like tactile things, but having a kid who's 2 right now is like watching how human beings develop and how much sensory input and touching and interacting and understanding how things connect to other things is so important. To our brains crave it. It's how we experience the world, and seeing how interesting it is for him to put VHS tapes in the thing and see how that works, versus like just pawing at my phone trying to swipe a picture of something, and it's like, it's like we're meant to do all these things. We're meant to engage more of our senses in stuff. So I think it's great to see the physical coming back, and they've really they've done a good job of making a case for it with showing how crassly they'll just delete things off of streaming services, and like suddenly my giant hard drive of media doesn't seem so archaic anymore.
Plus the fact that like your association with Nine Inch Nails and creating art for these physical products, it's like, there's so much to it. It's not just the putting it in, it's the opening it up, it's looking at the artwork, it's all that.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I've just been looking back on the 20th anniversary of Nine Inch Nails with Teeth, which is a really special album to me, because I got to create all the art and art direct. Yep, there it is in the background. I got to art direct that one, like, end to end, make all the visuals for it and conceive how how the whole campaign played out. But that album, the CD release, ended up being this very minimal thing because we were trying to do this big elaborate package, as was kind of the Nine Inch Nails way back then, and the record label was like pushing back on us and not wanting to spend the money on it, and because that was right at the turn where things were moving.
Yeah.
2005, things were moving digital, and what became people were like realizing that they were paying way too much for CDs, and MP3s and Napster and LimeWire and all that were on the rise. The music industry was at a tricky point. Things were turning, and they didn't want to spend any money on CD packaging at all. So and so we kind of just did this like reactionary, like, okay, you know what, you don't want to give us our package that we want, fine, we're not doing a package. And so the album has this very, very minimal digipack with a link to download the most ridiculous album art poster that you can.
It's gigantic.
It's massive. It's got all the lyrics like hidden through it. It took me forever to make that thing. and it was like, print your own, there you go. And so people did. Fans got together, and anyone with access to a large format printer at that time through their work or whatever was like, a hero on the message boards, and we're making them for other people. And I still have a couple of the ones we produced. But that was a kind of like, that was us trying to hold on to the idea of physical packaging while the industry was saying, that's the past. So we just said, whatever. A few years later, when we had more independence, when Nine Inch Nails had more independence, we were able to do some like really nice deluxe editions and stuff like that. But With Teeth fell right in the odd spot in between. So it's been interesting thinking about that and how much things have swung back around, from where that was.
Oh, and it's also a testament to the fact that the music industry's biggest enemy has always been the music industry.
Oh,
they keep making wrong decision after wrong decision, and now obviously it's become a let's just put it all on the artist and damage them as much as we can. But we don't have to go into late stage capitalism too much right now.
Well, that's a whole another couple hours.
Yeah. This is the 24-hour podcast of Dave and Rob just going over everything.
Many complaints about the state of everything.
Yeah. So dialing it back is one of my big through line of all the things that I put out is talking about like a modern successor, an ode to classic fandom and fanzines when I'm talking about comics, but just fandom in general. And that's like your gateway is fandom. But before the Nine Inch Nails fan site, I have to remind people that you helped popularize maybe the first meme of all time with the website of the dancing baby.
That's right. That is my earliest. I think my earliest claim to fame is possibly making accidentally the first internet meme.
Yeah,
it's interesting because for those unaware, I started working with Nine Inch Nails at age 19 because I made a fan page for them in the 90s when I was learning how to do HTML and graphics and stuff in high school, and I was making fan pages. So, but right before that, I had been testing my, building a homepage, testing my HTML skills and stuff. And so, as I was looking for things to like build a page for, and I had a page of like weird stuff. You'd have your homepage back in the 90s and you'd be like links and like neat things or whatever. And I just put like weird stuff that I'd find on there. I'd always scour like random BBSs and FTP sites and stuff and just find unmarked weird files. There's no good distribution method, especially for things like videos or whatever back then. So you just find like bbchaw1.avi on somebody's server where they had like, pictures of cool stuff from movies or something. Okay, what's this? I don't know. and it was, you didn't know until you waited an hour for it to download or whatever.
Just little by little by little.
You're thinking, is it just gonna be? Is it gonna be like a movie clip? Is it porno? We don't know. It could be anything. We find out. And it was this like creepy baby dancing, made of made with like at the time realistic computer graphics.
Yeah,
but very like uncanny valley. Just this soulless, dead-eyed meat puppet baby just and I thought it was 16 or 17 or whatever. I just thought it was funny. I just thought it was weird and creepy. So I put it on my page, and people kept asking for it, and then emailing me, like asking me for just for whoever stumbled onto my own personal homepage at that time. And so I made a little homepage just to where you could get that file, because I saw it was being passed around in emails or whatever. That led to the producer of Ally McBeal, I guess, finding it and deciding he wanted to put it in his TV show. Unbeknownst to me, they tracked down who actually made it, which was a 3D graphic software company. It was just one of the tech demos that they'd put in on the installation CD of their software, right? So they had no idea it was like going viral 90s style. But because of this Ally McBeal thing, it broke out into like the real world. So that was there were other things that were popular on the internet before then, but this was the first one to break out into mainstream pop culture. So I was, and then it became so deeply embarrassing because it was like the lamest like mall kiosk humor, like garbage. Yeah. It was just so lame. And I kind of made it happen, but I had nothing to do with it. I didn't make the baby. I didn't get any money or anything, So when I got hired in 19 Hours, I was like trying to be cool. Like, these are my heroes, rock gods, and I was trying to be like really cool. I did not mention that at all. Did not want to be associated with this, normie mall humor, stuff. So I never said anything about it when I was working with Nails, and I just let it recess into like the deep backgrounds of my life. Until one day, like years later, I'm talking with a friend, and I just made an offhand joke about it. And this friend of mine at the time, she was this is like 10 years ago. She was like younger than me, in her early 20s. I was in my late 30s, and so she was a different generation. She was like, "Wait, you did the dancing baby?" I'm like, you know about that? Just that was like one of the first things I ever watched on a computer when I was like a baby. And this was a girl who had been a very young child at that time, so this was like a funny thing for this, and it was like so trippy to me. Like, I'm responsible for your nostalgia, like your nostalgia, and that like put a different spin on it for me. It wasn't this like lame thing that I was too cool for when I was in college or whatever, but it was this like, oh yeah, that would be like your first, like your first like YouTube video that you saw, but the 90s version of that.
Yeah.
And so I brought it up with a friend of mine who was an old tech guy, and he's like, I think we started putting it together. Like, I think that was actually the first meme. I think, and suddenly it was like, wait, now I could just like reviewed the whole thing and like saw it through this lens of like, wow, I was a part of internet culture history. Like that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then like the like anniversary of it or whatever came around, and so like I ended up on a National Geographic show like talking about the origins of the internet and memes and stuff like that. So it's kind of a funny like random feather in my cap now to just be like, oh yeah, memes, that's my fault. All of them, they're all my fault.
I mean, it's interesting because when you think about the popularization of computer things, right, there's some of it that speaks to certain niche groups, and a lot of us remember different things, but that because it went mainstream, because it ended up on a Fox show, and Ally McBeal was like one of the most popular shows of the time, if not the most popular. Like, it's we all remember it in some way, shape, or form, and then like you said, it goes to another generation.
Yeah, and I have I had these VHS tapes that my mom had recorded at the time, and I digitized them. I put them on my YouTube for posterity. But they're clips of some of them have young me in them, and they're clips of TV shows at the time, like mainstream like network television. There's this Bryant Gumbel show on there, and they're just like they're talking about it like it's the weirdest thing. This baby came from the internet. What? You know, and it's like interviewing people about it, and it's like they're not talking about like the thing that happened on Ally McBeal. They're like trying to grasp with the idea that this is just a thing that came off the internet.
Yeah, yeah.
What does that mean? And it's a really weird tone where they're just like that you know you that might have drawn a line right there of who was going to move forward with understanding the internet and who was like, oh, this makes no sense to me, I'm out. You know? We all lost some parents' ability to progress with technology at that time.
That was the day that they lost it. That wasn't the first time though, or that wouldn't be the last time that you were on some type of news show, right? Weren't you on the inside? Was it Inside Edition that did where they thought Nine Inch Nails murdered somebody?
Oh no, I was on hard copy.
Hard copy.
Hard copy did a thing about Nine Inch Nails like in the late 80s, like 89, 90. Before my time, and where they were reporting on this like snuff video that the FBI found that turned out to be from Nine Inch Nails Down In It video when they're recording it, and they tried to mount a camera on a balloon and it flew away. Right. And then the FBI found the tape, and it was like some guy laying dead. They were trying to get an overhead shot of Trent laying dead in a field, and so like they did a whole investigation. So hard copy was out there, like, and it's so like hard copy, like the way that they're talking about like Trent. They're like, this is Trent of the band Nine Inch Nails, who thought it was funny to film this. He's got an earring in his nose. And so then years later, but still before I was working with Nine Inch Nails, hard copy came out to interview me about the dark side of the Dancing Baby.
That's so, okay. That's what it was.
They had found the people, you know, in true MAME, you know, nature, people found that, you know, that was a character you could add in that character studio, and they'd started doing, you know, their own remixes of it. So there was one where the baby's like, he's like naked and drunk. He's like holding a ball, stumbling and like peeing while he walks. And there's one where he gets hit by a car because naturally the kind of, you know, the Barney rage, you know, was eager to go somewhere. So there were people who were hating on the Dancing Baby in
of course
the way. So hard copy came to like try and find the scandals in this. Somehow there's got to be a scandal in this Dancing Baby thing, and I wouldn't give them anything. There's like, I'm on the interview and I'm like just barely. I'm like, yeah, I don't know that one. Yeah, yep. You get hit by a car. Right. Mm-hmm. There's nothing here, guys. It's just the internet.
They interviewed the wrong teen weirdo to try and get answers out of.
Yeah, and I was being very wholesome too. I was like, no, I don't have that one on my website because it's, you know, it's for kids and families. You know?
So you know, as you've said, that 99, you're in college. It's funny, you went to Pratt. A whole bunch of my friends were at Pratt at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, they emailed you to interview you, or just to say, hey, we're doing a new Nine Inch Nails website and we want you to head it up.
Yeah, I just got an email one day from a publicist who was working, you know, was representing Nine Inch Nails at the time, and they, you know, at this point in 99, beginning of 99, really, most brands, bands, etc., don't have official websites yet.
Yeah.
And, you know, few and far between. And so they were trying to build, and there were tons of Nine Inch Nails fan sites, the whole community already that where mine existed, and they were looking to build the first official Nine Inch Nails website. So they wanted to like find some fans who were already in that web space making things and stuff to reach out to talk about it. And they said, do you want to come down to New Orleans and interview essentially for this? And I was like, what? You know, like surreal, you know, it's like your favorite band, you got big posters on your walls and you made a website about it. And then all of a sudden I'd just gotten to art school in New York. It was a big deal to like get stuff ships and be able to try and figure out how to do that. And it was my dream and get to New York. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, Mom, I'm actually going to quit school and go to live in New Orleans and join a rock band. But that's something.
That is, I mean, that's, you know, it happens here and there, but like, you don't hear about it. You hear about it years later, but your journey through that, because the Nin fan community was and still is super tight, it's a legendary thing, but it's your real life. So it's kind of nuts in that regard.
Yeah.
As an artist, going down there for the first time and getting to know the band and Trent and all that, were there some quick bonds over any art or anything like shared interests in that regard that you found a kinship with as a young person with these, you know, well, they're not super old, but it was like you're looking up to them.
Oh yeah. I mean, Trent is he's 15 or so years older than me, so that's pretty solid difference. So it was not like my dad old, but it was like he was kind of like became like an older brother kind of like figure, to me. But so it was very intimidating, obviously, going down there and having no experience with anything other than my own little internet projects, and including one that I hope they didn't hear about, the Dancing Baby. um, and then getting there and being one of four, I think, other people who were selected to come down and meet for this job. One of whom runs, he still is runs the Nin hotline to this day. Maddie's a friend. He's great. He's done a ton of cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he was already like, he knew much more about like programming. And there's other guy there who had a whole portfolio of concert photography. And like, I felt like my imposter syndrome was just like, I felt young and inexperienced. And like, what am I doing here? And then to your question, in sitting down talking with Trent, we just kind of bonded. And it was like, we especially started talking about video games and Quake. And you play Quake? I'm like, yeah. And we started talking about that, and I think that was I don't know. I was less experienced, but something about that spark, and talking about Quake somehow pushed me into the job, and it's cool that he felt that there was something there worth checking out, and we had a really good creative bond from that, so it's cool.
And that bond yielded 15 or so years of work, and yeah. I'm very happy and honored, I don't know, to have experienced pretty much every iteration of everything you ever did with them, live or physical media or whatever. I mean, starting with the stuff with Teeth, but then going into the year zero, the game, the stage shows, the lights. I mean, like, I used to tell people, you can go see a show, you can go see a concert, but you can go see Nine Inch Nails, and you will get everything that you want for the price of that ticket, because it is like you come into your own. And I really think it was after year zero when like everything just kind of went up and the visuals were just insane, and then going into the slip. But I mean, your embracing of technology seems to be kind of what everything kind of got better and better and better. Was it always like, did you always have like kind of, how do I ask it? Were you supplied with toys to play with, to experiment with, to bring these visuals up to a level that nobody was doing at that time?
Yeah, I mean, it was, well, really, it was this, that I think the point that you're speaking of, which is especially in terms of the live shows, you're talking about what other fans always clue into is like kind of the like life-changing tour for them was the Lights in the Sky tour, which the one 2008, right after year zero, so it's kind of the year zero tour, but also for those other albums at the time. And that was the one that like it took everything we'd learned from the previous tours, but it propelled it. And really, the key twist there was um, pairing us up with Moment Factory, who was a interactive production company who had mostly done theatrical stuff. They did a lot of they were doing Cirque du Soleil shows and installations based out of Montreal, but rock concerts was not a thing. It wasn't a type of thing that you put what they do into. And it was their technology mixed with our kind of artistic sensibilities and then the kind of the vibe of Nine Inch Nails and everything we'd done visually and learned up to that point, like all that kind of coming together in the perfect storm. I think it was probably Roy Bennett. Roy Bennett's a lighting designer, very very famous lighting designer who had been designing Nine Inch Nails light shows since the '90s, since like the Self-Destruct tour, and had been doing all the tours with us. I think it was probably him who brought Moment Factory to the table, and we were a little uncertain about it because it seemed like a lot of like this interactivity and a lot of like, Trent was always very wary of like doing too many like tricks and like choreography, stuff that it had to remain a rock show, but so it seemed like it was going to be like maybe too much of that, and then we got in there and we just started working through it, and Moment Factory brought this completely different kind of sensibility, but this incredible technology, and with Roy, we're designing the stage lights, and then Trent and I like going in there every day and seeing, okay, what can this technology do? What can this do? And like, it was really the result of just like many, many, many days of just getting in there and having me as the creative director, but also having an artist who was very interested and in tune with all that stuff and was in there being very involved in every decision. So, I mean, it was a massive, massive undertaking of a lot of people, but just kind of created this perfect storm where we were able to kind of tastefully bring just the right amount of this other theatrical world that was living in a different tech space than the concert world. Bring that in just enough to elevate concerts, but make them feel still like rock concerts, just like something new, and it really was. It was a very special tour, and that's the thing people that and the Year Zero ARG are kind of the things people always like bring up to me as like very defining for them, and that's cool.
Well, because when you think about it, because you're a fan, like you watch the Pretty Hate Machine Downward Spiral era and you're integrated into the Fragile era, and that was one. But then how do you do things to keep people their eyes popping out of their head while their ears are feeling all of this amazing music that's happening? He's creating new music, and the ARG, the Year Zero thing, was nobody had done it. Nothing. I mean, like, I know there was a little bit of it, but nothing of that scope that felt small for the fans, but was huge in really what it was doing.
It was, yeah. I mean, that was another case where like we found the right collaborators from a different world, which is 42 Entertainment, and again, it happened to be this perfect storm of Trent had created this album that was unlike anything he had done before, and at one point I hadn't heard the album yet or anything. He was working on it, and I after living in the studio for like the Fragile and with Teeth and stuff, like, and hearing every iteration of the songs all the time, by this point I wasn't living in the same place, trying at a home studio. So, and I kind of liked not hearing it all the time through his versions. I'd get to like actually kind of hear something that he'd been working on. So I went over to his house and he's like, okay, I gotta play this music, but here's all the lyrics, because there's like this whole story. Like, it's not like it's not written the usual way, where it's, you know, very internal. This is like a whole thing. And so I was just like, we sat there with all these papers, and I was like, I got my wheels spinning. I was like adding ideas to the mythology and all this stuff. I was just like, couldn't believe it. And his question to me was, how do I tell you, you know, all these ideas that I have, all this stuff that fueled the all this stuff that's behind each song. There's only songs, but behind it is all this mythology and whatever. How do I bring that out to the album without it being like just a long thing you read or something like that? You know, what's the he kept referencing, you know, being a kid and poring over the liner notes in a vinyl package, and what's the equivalent? Is there some new version of that we can do? And I had just gotten like pulled into the AI, artificial intelligence campaign for the movie, where they had, like, the trailers were very, very mysterious. You know, not much was known about it except that it was this Kubrick project that Steven Spielberg had taken on, and they weren't really showing much of anything from the film. But the trailers had, like, you know, I noticed that there were weird characters that showed up, you know, highlighted in the credits, and it led to a secret website that was like fiction of the movie and stuff. And I'd just been fascinated with all that. And I was like, you know, there's this thing that they've been doing for movies, you know? And so we started looking into it, and I was just thinking, like, maybe we could do something like this. Maybe we could, like, hide some of this stuff online, and in terms of, like, let's find out who makes this. Let's find out who does this. And you know, it's one of those things that was like, it was unheard of, because movie promotional budgets are a vastly different thing than an album promotional budget, especially in the post music industry in the mid 2000s, you know. And so it just wasn't, you know, no sane person would put that much marketing effort into an album at that point. But we found them, 42 Entertainment. We met with them, and they were like really inspiring and cool. And the lead, one of the main people there at the time, Alex Liu, he was like a huge Nine Inch Nails fan, was really excited about all this, and so it was like, how do we make this happen? And Trent's pitch to the record label was, take all of your marketing budget, all of the music video budget, everything, just combine all that and give it to us to just spend on this thing, you know, and just trust me. And he's like, and here's the thing, you, the record label, you cannot be involved at all. and you know, Trent had a good relationship with Jimmy Iovine, and they had a lot of trust. There was still some sense of, you know, big record labels connected to the era when they believed in artists and whatever. Yeah. It was still hanging on there. So, you know, they said, okay, you know, Trent, you've earned this artistically, you know, to be able to have us go along with it. And we knew it was really crucial to not have the label involved at all, because we knew, like, we started self-releasing because we knew that as soon as you send the masters out for manufacturing, whatever, it leaks on the internet. Yeah. So we had to keep them out completely, but we needed their money to pay for this thing, right? So it was it was another one of those things where it was like, it happened at the time it did, and it could not have happened before, and it would never happen again, because all the stars aligned. And I think one of the many reasons people remember it as fondly as they do is because it also is the community, like you said, small but big. It was reflective of how the internet was at that time, which it no longer is.
Right.
You know? It was a different version of the internet where something like that could happen, and we could spend another hour going into all the reasons why that can't happen now. But it really, like, I think that hits a strange point of, like, internet nostalgia as well. The way that whole campaign played out, and it was fascinating to watch and to learn how 42 Entertainment, like, understood that landscape of the internet and how to put things out there and track how they would spread and how they would pace the game and kind of, react to how things were playing out, and understand that there was only so much they could control, and then have to take turns. I mean, it was incredible. It was a fascinating experience. I learned a lot from it, and I'm just very, very glad to have been involved in stuff like that.
Well, we wait for the day when there's a full length documentary about it. But could you just imagine the record label like, okay, wait, you want to kidnap these people and bring them to a warehouse with a SWAT team? Yeah, they would never say yes.
We didn't tell them anything about it. But that was a funny one, because Trent was, after we did that whole thing, Trent was getting calls from this, like, panic calls from his lawyer, and like, did you have someone detained by the cops and like held overnight? And Trent was like, whoa, no, we didn't do that. We just threw some people into vans. But it turned out that some of the people who had been part of that experience were like creating their own fiction. They were going on, continuing the story, and like writing things that didn't happen, and our lawyers were freaking out.
And who?
It was when the marriage of fiction and reality on the internet was still a fun thing.
Yes, it wasn't a terrifying thing,
democracy crushing thing.
Yeah, and who would have known that the entire storyline of Year Zero would play out? Unfortunately, really much how it was written in real life. Jesus, man. I mean, like, I think you brought to light some of that stuff during COVID. You were talking about like some of the similarities, and I was just like, music, art, these things, they reflect reality, and then, it's life imitating art, imitating life, all that. But was your creation Artist Resistance? Was that completely your idea, that piece of it?
No, that was everything in that campaign was some collaboration with everybody. The art, the actual flag, the art is just that was created by 42's designers, and but it was like they would bring back a whole page of designs, and we would talk through it and say that, and so it was that whole thing was just a whole big collaborative effort with Trent and 42 and myself. So yeah, it's wild. It's wild to have been kind of just looking at the world and saying, here's what's going to happen if we keep on this path. And then, I think there was a certain feeling shortly after that maybe things weren't going to be going down that path. And then they were like, oh yeah, actually, yeah, we are actually still on that path. We just kind of took a slight detour, but really it's all still happening. So, worse and dumber than you could have ever imagined.
Yes, by far dumber.
That's the thing we did not predict is the stupidity of it.
Yeah. But getting back to maybe some more positive things. Obviously your time with Nine Inch Nails is amazing. How to Destroy Angels was such an interesting thing that I just wanted to talk about a little bit. I got to see the show at the Apollo, which was fucking beautiful. I mean, it was fantastic.
That was amazing.
Yeah. How does that because you're not known as a musician, but you were playing synth live. So how does that kind of come into fold with you?
I wasn't actually playing synths. I was affecting video with a MIDI controller. So and it was like, basically what that, it's sometime from like the band kind of starting in 2010 or whatever. Between that point and the album in 2012, 2013, Trent wanted to acknowledge a kind of collective, that the visual aspect was going to be as important as the music, and the way of kind of acknowledging that and making it feel like more of a collective. Part of that was people like Alessandro coming into the live band, and contributing some aspects to that, where his remix became the main thing, and then the other part of it was acknowledging the visuals was just having me as part of the collective, and so being on stage to was a kind of a it was a way of representing that, like, the artist who made all the things that are surrounding us is like part of this. And so I worked with Moment Factory on some effects that I could do, some glitching and other, real-time effects that I could do to manipulate the visuals that I had made on the stage, at the time. And so I was doing that with with a synth controller, which was just like a fun way to play the visuals on the stage. But it's often misunderstood that I had something to do with the music. I make no claims to be a musician. I was when I was a kid, and I went the visual route, but it was very cool because it did play to my old musical instincts when I was young, of like, rhythmically interacting with the visuals. It was, I mean, that year was so busy, that decade was so busy, so much that tour was so short. It feels like kind of a
pretty blip, contained,
but it was like really crazy to be like, I'm playing my first concert. I've never played in a concert on stage before. Oh, really? Like, I didn't know. Yeah, I just doing the visual. But yeah, I'm gonna be on stage. Oh, where are you playing? Coachella. Surreal. They're really surreal to look back on. But everything was go go go. We were doing tours that year, and I was doing all the design of all of them, and still doing all the nail stuff. We had releases coming out. We did the album. I did all the art for the House Angels album. And amidst that, it was like, I was like, oh yeah, okay, yep, obviously, yeah, we got to play shows now. Yeah, I'm gonna learn that, play shows. But I look back on it, it's like, holy shit, that was actually kind of crazy. I mean, it's kind of cool to, in a very, like, my dad used to be cool sort of way, showing like my kid like the videos of like Coachella. Look, that's your dad there. That guy on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. And in, 10 years or so, it's going to be like, what was Coachella? Well, this was Coachella. This is what it is now, but this was Coachella.
Yeah. Before it was just known as the fireplaces, that it's all burning on fire. I mean, people could actually go there.
Yeah. And breathe outside. So in all of this, in this portion of your career, as we can see with the album art, glitch art becomes more and more your thing. Is it something that, were you fascinated by, like our old TVs and seeing that? Like, where does that kind of start with what becomes your business at this point is Glitch Goods?
It came, well, part of it was that by the 2013, by the How to Stray Angels time, it was kind of something that I had become known for. Mm-hmm. And I was always looking for kind of new directions for it. My interest in VHS tapes and all that stuff had been, visceral since, growing up in that era, of course. But most of the glitching I'd done, especially right before that, was related to digital. It really started at the turn of the century, or turn of the millennium, when there was it was kind of being used as a way to express the kind of strange unease of the world turning to this like new digital. And everything was digital. That was the whole thing. Whatever I'm talking about at the millennium, and there was a strange. I was very much a technological guy. I was very much moving forward, but there was a strange like unease of the way it felt to go from feeling like there was something you were holding to it all becoming digital, and it was all being touted as this new technology, better in every way, but like you're looking at it and it's like, okay, well this video, like, come on, guys, it looks like shit, like just like it's all it was compressed all to hell, like a lot of stuff, a lot of the new technologies of the future were not that great initially, but I was still, I was excited about it. Like I was, we did one of the first commercial, releases that was all done on DV with like home software and stuff, but and so I was very excited about all the future, but I also was like wanting to like pull some of these like strange little bits that no one wanted to kind of acknowledge, the flaws in the technology. I wanted to pull them out, and they were fascinating to me. And I started making glitch art with them leading up to with Teeth in the early 2000s, and it wasn't really considered art in any mainstream way at that time, because like those are the things you're supposed to be hiding and glossing over when you're using these new technologies. And I was like dragging them out, just like, really like playing with like MPEG compression and breaking images and DV damaging DV tape. So my turn as digital technology became more perfected, and glitch art in the digital sense had come more into the mainstream by the 2010s. I was thinking back to my time of damaging DV tapes to get digital artifacts out. It's really cool because you damage the tape, but the artifacts that it creates are digital because it's storing data in there. And so I wanted to kind of circle all the way back to analog now, because I was feeling the pull towards that texture, and I wanted to take some of the kind of themes that I'd done back to that. So I ended up finding a lot, like in typical analog form, it's like there's a lot more between point A and point B. There's a whole infinite spectrum in there, whereas the digital world can only offer so much when you break it apart. You can it so far, right? But breaking down analog technologies, there's so many inflection points, there's so many different ways to do it, there's so many different variables that happen. And after kind of 2013, 2014, I kind of started feeling like, well, I've kind of done this now. It's time to move on. But then I kept getting pulled back into it, and I kept finding more and more and more. And now, 10, 12 years later, I keep finding even more, because now there's a whole scene that's been built out of it. I've got these machines here that are like, they're custom made by artists. Like these are some, these ones, I don't know if you can see them back here. These is Tachyon Plus custom analog glitch machines. So like all this stuff I used to do just with wires and like, kicking with a VCR back in the day, before this was like a real art form. Now there's a whole world out there of people making things for it. And so it's lived on, it's grown, it's continued. And now I'm getting things out of it that I didn't think it was possible to continue to find more in this medium. And yet here we are. And it's thanks to like this whole young scene of people, tinkers, like just continuing to evolve it. So it's really cool to have been, again at the forefront of that, and then seeing it take on its own life, and now you see it everywhere.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you look at it from the standpoint of people our age, we're seeing something that we're familiar with, totally done in a different way that we never thought would be appealing to see. Like you said, hitting the TV or whatever, and then all of a sudden that happens.
And that's I mean, I'm always a little like people say, oh, you're ahead of the curve. I'm like, yeah, but I'm also kind of like too early sometimes. Like it really became clear, like way back with Teeth stuff. It's like, oh, this was weird. It was a weird visual texture that like Nine Inch Nails fans and the people who like that kind of stuff could understand, but people weren't ready to see the digital medium being broken down and deconstructed yet, because it was still this new thing. And you were about, I can't tell you how many times I get calls from printers and other people being like, hey, I think your files are broken. I'm getting all that. Can you resend this? And I'm like, no, it's supposed to look like that. It's supposed to be like that. I reassuring the DP on the music video that no, I actually want to film it that way because it's supposed to look like, whereas, if you wait a certain amount of time, then you tie into the kind of nostalgia of things that people are ready to have those textures deconstructed and broken apart. The VHS wave right now is really hitting that, and it's really allowing people to like enjoy the textures of VHS flaws. It's really hitting, and now we also in that time period passed by the point where people were ready to see digital glitching as an interesting aesthetic finally, because it was a familiar enough and comfortable enough that deconstructing it was something that at some point it started just going into everything. Like every movie title of into a certain type of genre would be like glitching.
Yep.
There's some real bad filters made along the way, but it's wild to watch the curvature of the whole thing and been like, oh, I get it. I was too soon on that. That's why I'm getting all this recognition for it now, as opposed to back then. It was not the same way.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting. Like, it kind of goes back to the conversation started with looking back and not feeling like back in my day. But because all of this stuff happened so rapidly, like you said, we can get a chance to look back. And now when you do that, it feels a little bit easier. I don't know. I'm not sure.
There's a certain amount of that. The speed of everything doesn't really allow for much reflection. I think in a dangerous way, but sometimes it's really nice to go back and just spend some time with things much later and actually get to explore them more thoroughly. But it's what's interesting, what makes me kind of feel good about, especially like the VHS glitching and stuff like that, is how much like there's this whole younger generation of people who really like just kind of inherently understand this stuff and are into it. Yeah. There's something about that analog texture that communicates something even to people who didn't grow up with it. And there's a whole young art scene, getting into all this stuff purely for the artistry and the aesthetics of it. And it's reassuring to me, at least, because I know that it's not just a nostalgia thing. It's not just for people who remember the tape crackling and doing that when they were a kid. There's something more to it. And I think the tactile, the physical, the analog, all that stuff is speaking to younger people in a sort of like mysterious way of like, this, I think there's a pull towards it a little bit. It's a whole different kind of pull when you've grown up only with digital stuff, but it's a pull nonetheless. And I hope there's a version of timelines where we course correct to some degree. I'm not an anti-technology guy, but I don't think anyone is really enjoying where we are at right now with technology. I don't think anyone is. I think that's been made really clear in the last couple of years, especially. But I don't think anyone's having fun anymore. Overall,
it's
obviously we're doing podcasts. We're doing a lot of fun stuff, but the feeling of living in it isn't.
The feeling of control that it has over us is really the problem. That's
and I think when you suddenly like when it feels like the curtain is pulled off of like how much it controls us and how it is being controlled and how when that stuff gets pulled off and it's just there, and then you're expected to just continue, but now it's all in plain sight and no one even tries to hide. I don't know. It's a different feeling now, and I don't think I think it can only continue so much further now that the kind of gloves are off. So hopefully we dial something back and again look back and learn from not just the pre-internet times, but like what we were talking about, like the golden age of the internet. Like there was a point there, the year zero thing hits it a little bit, where it was like the internet was a much more a place where a lot more people had a lot more control over things.
It was discovery too. Discovery, like kind of like the first time you're old enough to really give a shit when you go into a library and realize what you've got at your fingertips that you can do, as a, when you're a child, you don't care. But like, I feel like 11, 12, 13, you walk into a library and you're like, wait, I can just grab this book that has all these dinosaur artists, like dinosaur books, shark books, whatever it is. That's what the early internet felt like. And there's still portions of it, but when we think about technology just on a movie, I know you're a huge movie person, just like myself. you look at the things that like Lucas did or Chris Nolan or James Cameron, these are pioneers. And then you look at when the studios took hold of that stuff and bastardize it, and it really just destroys the medium that you love.
Yeah, yeah, and it's again, it's control, it's money, it's all these things.
Yeah.
It's all the things. So much of the world is run by things that are so antithetical to art and to creation and to community.
Yeah.
I think you really see now how much it requires the kind of pulling apart of community in order to like keep some of these machines moving forward. And art is so connected to all that. To maybe a different point, but to just, you made me think of it to your point about movies. Another thing I think about a lot with the digital age turn and our specific age group is we were also the last generation to grow up in the era of movie magic. Remember that? It would be like, because in leading up to, again, and not, I really try to vet myself on thinking all this stuff about the like not like the 90s was, not trying to mean that it was the best time or anything like that, but there was something that specifically was different about everything. And one of the things that we were kind of building up to, you know, really peaking at like the Matrix, weirdly right at the end of the millennium, was every time there'd be a new type of technology that would get used in some new way in a movie.
Yeah.
It was like you'd go to the movies and you'd see things that you had never seen before. And like once CG got to a point where it could do most anything, it turned to a point where like it's not like people weren't making amazing visuals in movies anymore, but you already had the expectation that you can go to a movie and anything could happen on that screen. You'll see anything. So then it becomes about how it's done and what the story is, whatever. But prior to that, it was like you would go to the movies and there would be things that you just simply did not think they could do.
Jurassic Park, T2, and Matrix.
Yeah, all that stuff, and it was like every couple of years or so, there'd be a new special on TV, the movie magic. Look what they're doing, and you'd see the latest Stan Winston robots and how they were. You'd see them all turn to like polygons because they were adding stuff with computers now, and like it was, but it really truly was like oh man, they've just added a new. It was like game consoles getting more bits or whatever. Like you could go to the movies the next year and be like, well, they got more stuff now. We can do dinosaurs now. What the fuck?
and that brings us to the portion of the show where we talk about Jar Jar Binks.
All right.
I'm an unabashed Jar Jar fan.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, because, C-3PO is annoying as fuck. Jar Jar is no more annoying than C-3PO.
Wow. You really woke up today and you chose violence.
I do most days.
I like to think, like in theory, I'm not as much of a Jar Jar hater, but then I remember the last time I tried to watch Phantom Menace, I did watch it, and it was, it is kind of, but I will say, I have come to appreciate that, like, the prequels are, if nothing else, George Lucas having a pure vision,
just going for it.
But also, I will say that they are, one thing they do really well is like they're really good at building out a history of a world. Really laying that out. And this is going to be some kind of Star Wars blasphemy, but I think they're doing that really well with
Andor
right now. So my Star Wars blasphemy is Andor owes a lot to the Phantom Menace,
Well, so the podcast episode that comes out this Monday before this one comes out the following Monday is me just kind of talking about Star Wars for a half hour and, basing it on what I'm seeing with Andor and the unfortunate fact that what Andor is showing us is what's happening in real life, all over the world and, obviously in Palestine and all that.
I remember saying when the first season came out, I was like, I did not expect a Star Wars show to actually be just this like really meticulous breakdown of how fascism creeps and how rebellion forms. I mean, it is really really meticulous and very much like very direct about
Yeah.
what it is laying out. And someone really, they really saw the opportunity there to say, like, we don't even have to make a comment. I mean, that's the best of what sci-fi is, really. I mean, it's what we all try to do with sci-fi. But they really saw an opportunity there of, like, you don't have to say anything about anything, because you just tell the story of what happened in this fictional universe, because and it's, man, it's gripping.
It is. It's rough too on the emotional toll that it takes when you really.
I confess I'm not caught up on Andor,
Okay.
because
Won't spoil anything.
as my wife Steph, she's like, I can't do it right now. I just, like, the first season, like, we watched together, and this one, things have changed since the first season, and she's like, I need a little more escapism right now.
You created this comic right here over my shoulder in 2019, High Level, with DC, The Last Gasp, I guess, of Vertigo, right? That was the last book.
No, it was the last original title on Vertigo.
Yeah.
They have now, as of this year, I think, rebooted it again. Yeah. It's like, after, the people who were doing Vertigo at the time were people who believed in Vertigo. They just rebooted it. The bad stuff happened because of AT&T for buyouts. It's ready. But it ended up because of all that being the last Vertigo title.
But High Level's a futuristic story. I wanted to ask you, like, in writing this story, were you inspired by a lot of the things that you possibly have written for the Year Zero TV show that never got made, or is this like just kind of more ideas from your same brain?
Same brain, but it definitely, like, I would say, things that I learned about in the process of developing the Year Zero story that never was, building out, the narrative and stuff. I think all those lessons went into High Level, and my interests kind of remained the same. And the really fun part of High Level was kind of doing again what we started to do with Year Zero, building out the world and the lore, and then the journey through it and all that. And it's a little frustrating because I had actually planned out the entire, the entire 18 chapter story. Like, it was a complete thing.
Yeah.
It was interrupted by some very obnoxious corporate shenanigans, and I don't have access to the story. I haven't been able to get it back from Warner Brothers since, so I can't finish it. But it was really, really, really fun to write, and
it's a great story.
I'm just happy that it's out there. I got to make a thing on Vertigo. That's really cool. I try not to lament too much that I didn't get to finish it, but it's really hard when there was some stuff there's some stuff in the rest of the story that's literally about what is exactly happening right now, to the point where if I released it now, they'd be like, yeah, you're just writing about right now. It's 17.
Yeah.
It got very, the whole rest of the story was very, there was a lot of failing AI on abandoned Mars colonies that never got built because
Well, it does really, it's a testament to your storytelling ability, and hopefully one day you are able to finish it. But I enjoyed reading it, and I know, it's funny, I had mentioned on the other channel, the comics channel, that I was interviewing today, and somebody's like, I just wrote all caps in the chat, High Level. I was like, yeah,
we didn't, the whole the whole marketing side of the label basically just went away after we started putting our comic out, because the kind of writing was on the wall for everything, and so we didn't really we didn't get that much push, because it was CNN, but and especially by the time the graphic novel was basically like a contractual obligation, they had to put it out, but they didn't follow it or anything. So So, you know, it doesn't have this like massive readership to like, you know, to use as currency. But the people who read it are like, so like, they're always asking me like, what's the deal? What's going on? Are we need more? We need more. I'm like, I wish, but it's not. It's very nice. Like when you like find a dedicated audience, you know, like, and it's like that was like really cool for me because it was one of the first things I did post Nine Inch Nails. It was really mine.
Yeah.
You know, not connected to a music project, although I did make a music out of it.
Yep. There's the soundtrack.
But it was very, you know, you realize like how satisfying it is to find your audience, and if they're really passionate about something you did, like it's very scalable. Like you can get really excited about 10 people who are super into something you did.
Mm-hmm.
I made this like VHS art project thing. They only made like 50 of them, and you know, so it's very, very small. And the first wave of them went out, and there was a guy who got one, and he's like tagging me online, and like I was like playing it the like widescreen version on his high definition CRT. It's like one of these rare ones. It's a widescreen CRT, and like so stuck on like, yes, somehow this project found its exact person. Yeah, that's what it's all about there. You know, like just when you can connect with the right audience, and it makes me really happy at high level did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you come from like, you know, this whole road of talking about fandom and all that. It's like you always just want to find the niche that you fit in as a fan or as a creator.
Yeah,
because it's always going to be stronger when you've got that core, like you said.
Yeah, and then that's, I mean, I think you know, people can feel the importance of community more than ever, and you do now like have to like really search and try to find your like actual organic communities out there, and so they mean a lot to, and it means a lot to me that there's people who follow my work and have been following my work for so long now, and people who just discovered me and whatever, and they can, you know, it feels like this little community that's very, very meaningful. It's like what you really, you go on a long road of like career and all this stuff, and you pass by all these different like metrics of like, what does it mean? How do you define success? And you watch people fall apart because their version of it is unattainable, or they taste it once and then never again.
Yeah.
And you realize that like, man, if you can realize that like your definition of success is really about making some kind of connection with people with what you do, that to me is success. You know, it's like it's and when I really like came to understand that, it was very freeing, and that's what kind of like made me so stoked about like doing like Glitch Kids and stuff like that, dude. From there, where it was like we were just like doing what we wanted from our house. I mean, doing what we wanted from our house, and people were into it, and it felt kind of small and folksy coming from a career of like doing giant shows and tours, but it was all the same thing. It was the same like connectivity and just making stuff that made people happy. And then you see people wearing your designs out in the world, it makes their day a little better. And it's just like, this is like, shit, man, this is all I need. It really comes down to like, what is it that you want to get out of being an artist? And that's what it is. And it's that interaction, that connection.
Yeah. I, you know, speaking of that, I struggle. I deal with it a lot. Imposter syndrome, or just trying to figure out what my level of success is, because I'm trying to create a place for people to just come enjoy, you know, whether it's this podcast, good conversation, that introducing somebody to something that they might not know, or, you know, in the comic channel is not just selling comics, but talking about it with creators. And you know, I had Todd McFarlane on like a year and a half after I started my channel. And it was like this moment where I'm just like, Dave, you can't get higher than this when it comes to comics. Like, Kirby's not alive anymore. So, you know, you're talking to the Todd father, and it was like so many people would send me messages like, such a great conversation. Thanks for putting that out there. And I'm like, wow, I'm still trying to figure out how I pulled that one off.
Yep.
You know, and it's tough when you try to step back and be like, what is success to you as the creator, whatever it is you're doing. And I love hearing people talk about like what you just said. It's just, you know, even if it's two people that you affected, like, and brought that thing into their lives and its joy,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's really. I mean, you don't. All right, imposter syndrome is it's something I try to talk about a lot because people actually like they're like surprised. Like, you have imposter syndrome? Like, yes. Like, I don't think anyone's a real. I think you're a real artist if you don't have in some way. You know, I think there's probably some performers out there who you know don't have it. Maybe it's just, but I don't know. I think the people who don't are just lying to you because it's the nature of creativity, right? It's part of your. It's just going to be a passenger in your brain to your creative person, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it really helps to like really look at like what you get out of something and try and like deal with that like that demon of what success is and whatever. You know, because I have friends who are amazing musicians and they're my age now, and I've seen, you know, the full spectrum of where that ends up. With I know some of them who have made amazing music and done a lot of stuff, but seem immensely unhappy because it never broke out in the way that they wanted it to, and yet so they're not appreciating all the like cool stuff that they have done.
Yeah.
And now some friends who are having a blast being musicians because they just said at some point they said, you know what, this is a hobby for me. I'm not trying to make it in any real way, and they playing and they're having fun and they're enjoying the art doing it, and like it's really hard to figure out where you are happy landing on all that.
Yeah.
The key is really looking at what you impact and what you get to do. You know, it was weird. It was weird going back into that world with Pearl Jam, like after a few years of like really getting down doing small personal projects, and then all of a sudden being back on the tour circuit and like, you know, this real, just really, you just gotta like really enjoy how much you get to like, how much you get to do in life, whatever the scale is. You know?
Yeah. Speaking of, you know, you have now, you know, with this announcement that came last year, almost a year ago, right? It was your first show with Pearl Jam in Vancouver.
Yeah, a year ago.
I find that Rob Sheridan has now worked with my two all-time favorite bands. You know, I'm not ashamed to say I've seen Pearl Jam over 40 times. I've been seeing them since '94. And, you know, I got to see your work on both Seattle shows at the Amazon endorsed Climate Pledge Arena.
Yeah.
So
the key arena to me. If you want to go back in.
What'd you say?
The Coliseum.
That's right. That's right. Speaking of the Coliseum, Nassau Coliseum was my first Nine Inch Nails show back in 1995. But
wow.
How does this come about? Like, how do you get on the radar for Pearl Jam? And can I just say, like, another amazing thing to see that you took what you do and added it to a band that never did anything like that and just breathed an entire new life into the visual standpoint of their shows.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's a relief to talk to, especially fans of the band, because, you know, Pearl Jam fans they're like Nails fans. You know, they're very hardcore. They're
dedicated.
Opinions, you know, and to pretty much universally hear from fans that they really enjoyed this dimension that we brought to the show, like, huge relief for me, because, you know, that was my major concern. There was not concern, but the thing that was on my mind through the process is like really keeping an eye on the balance here and making sure that this is about making best Pearl Jam show
Yeah.
what we can make, and not about changing how it feels to be there, changing, any of the what's important about it or anything, but just adding something new that can kind of be part of the fabric of it. And I like to think that I'm very proud of what I did. I like to think we did a good job with it. A lot of the credit goes to the band. You might have trouble integrating new elements into some bands, but when you're dealing with one of the best live bands of all time, they do make it a little bit easier because which it's the we were joking like first show in Vancouver because new first show tour you're always
Jitters.
No one slept. You're running. You're trying to finish things. Just anything can happen. Everything from like, is someone gonna forget to push the button that turns on the thing? So, will this feel right? We've only done it enough. Will it feel right? People here, are we doing all right? It wasn't like the Nails tours where each one was kind of an incremental upgrade from the previous. This brand new. It was patch, right? And so the first show's happening, and I was just joking like, this doesn't feel as tense as like as a Nails tour or something, because the way we structured the Nails tours were very like, everything was very kind of planned out. It was dialed in every way. And this Pearl Jam show had a loose structure to it. It was kept loose in places on purpose because of the band. And just joking like, well, if all the fucking video and lights and everything go out or just fail in some way at a Nine Inch Nails show, and it's happening, we're screwed.
Yeah.
We're in the dark, and so Clint hitting up things, and we get it back because there isn't a show that none of this. But we're sitting there watching Pearl Jam. It's like, if all the lights went out right now, someone would light a match, and they play probably the best show in Pearl Jam history. And
it would be acoustic, and it would just be like whatever.
And not that's any reason to feel less nervous or want to make sure it goes right, but it really is that type of band where it's like, I'm glad to give them this new world to play in, but they could actually pull it off anywhere with anything.
Yeah, and with their the ever-changing set list, you can build visuals for songs that they may not play or they may play, and like it gives you
some out there that I'm not sure if there's like a couple of visuals that I was hoping to see and I never saw while I was out with them, and I'm not sure if they've even popped up yet.
yeah who knows? I mean, I wish I could do what I used to do and go to 10 shows or 5 shows on a tour, but it ain't like that anymore with traveling and all that.
I know. Well, I was very fortunate to be able to stay out and work on the tour for most of the runs last year, because we had to adapt the whole thing to the outdoor version. We're trying to just add as many additional songs as possible, and so I'm going to go out to the Pittsburgh shows that are going to close out this run. Excited to see everybody, to check it out again.
That'll be fun. I kind of jealous, when Steph, by the way, big shout out to Steph for making all this happen, but said that your travel schedule shifted. I'm like, I guess he's going to the end of the tour.
yeah. It's because who knows? They don't have any more shows booked so far this year. So
no,
I'm just like, well, you know what? If they don't do any more this year, they might not do this show again. So I have no idea. Maybe it's the last time that I get to see the show that I built. So yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah.
They'll do more. I have no idea. So I just want to make sure.
Yeah. And I'm always hoping they're going to do more. But it's funny because like the visuals have been great, and you can see Rob's behind the scenes process on Patreon or on Instagram, and I'm going to have all your links down below. But there's one that I think was night 2 in Seattle that really popped out at me. And at first I'm like, oh, they're playing Evolution. It's the video. And then I noticed, I'm like, no, that's not the music video. And then I heard you on the State of Love and Trust podcast say that's Eddie's story to tell. And I was like, oh shit, that was the Spawn sizzle reel he made to pitch the Evolution video to Todd, wasn't it?
It's something with known.
yeah. There is a, I mean, it's a thing of legend, but they released a book, a hardcover book a couple years ago called The Art of Evolution. And it's all about the music video being made. And Todd tells the story that Eddie used to have like hobby editing, which is nuts. You don't think about that. Something he's going to have. And he made that to pitch to McFarlane.
Wow. Well, I was trying not to tell this story because I didn't know if Ed wanted to tell it or something. But now that you've like you've done all your flickering, I guess I have to tell it to some degree. The evolution being a show is like something that I brought up like and felt excited about because it's kind of breaks my rule of like. I never want to just put the music video on the screen.
Sure.
It's lazy, right? But I had, in prepping for the program concept and all that, I was revisiting our, all programs videos and stuff. And, it should be said, because you mentioned it, I grew up in Seattle and I was a huge fan of program because it was like part of my DNA.
Yeah.
Growing up here, and it was a big deal to of all the acts that could kind of come around for me to get back into this stuff. It was like, wow, I mean that's bucket list, right? So I wanted to really look through everything and really think about how they've been represented visually in the past, and I pulled up Evolution because Steph hadn't stepped in to remember if she'd seen it since like back in the day or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like, man, this thing still so good, man. So good. And it's only gotten more relevant.
I know.
And it overlapped with the fact that I was, I came up learning to draw as a teenager. I mentioned Bill Watterson, but after that, as I got a little older, it was Todd McFarlane.
Sure.
Like you said, we're the same age. So that's all the same. Influence. I had all the Spawn toy, I was like,
mm-hmm.
from McFarlane fan in the 90s. And so like that was this cool intersection where I was like, you know what? And amidst all these like high concept things we were doing, I was like, I was trying to add like I think, I don't know if you watched it really, but I think it's the time to just put the Evolution video on during that song. It would look cool. Everyone would be stoked to see it up there. I love it. And he's like, let's try it. Let's try it. And he's like, actually, there's this old cut of it that I have. And, well, I don't think I have it anymore, actually. And he tells me about the sizzle reel thing. So he cut together clips from Spawn, and he shows this room. We're in his home studio. He shows me this room. He's like, I used to have this old like Avid editing suite, that I got this room to do video. And he's like, of course, right after that, they Final Cut camera, you could do it on your computer. So, but he was doing it with a real editing equipment, and would just do it for fun. And he cut together fun like thing to show McFarlane, the thing that you're talking about. And I was like, well, that would be cool. And he said, I don't think I have it anymore. And then one day as we were working on a show, we'd gotten the video the best quality we could of the official one, and then cleaned it up a bit, and it was looking awesome on stage. And then Ed's also like, he sends me a picture of a VHS tape, and he's like, I found it. So we slid that into the show, and everyone's been asking me, so what's the deal with that thing? Well, it's like clips from that in there, and I don't know. But it's more important in terms of legacy than you might think. It's not just, so because it had never been, seen before. So
it's so validating. I did, the Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's pointing at the TV. When I heard you say that in the interview and saying that's Ed's story, that was me. I was like, I know what that is.
Wow. That's something there.
Yeah. And we'll wrap it up soon, but I want to kind of bring it.
You're gonna tell State of Love and Trust that you scooped him.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to send him a message and just be like, here's the clip.
Yeah.
But bringing it in full circle, it was whatever 2 or 3 months ago, the new trailer for the Naughty Dog game Intergalactic drops, which you put together, bringing together Trent and Atticus are doing the score. The Last of Us 2 is extremely built upon Eddie's the Pearl Jam song. What is it? Oh God, it just escaped me. Days.
Days. Yes.
Future Days. Yeah. So, and then you're in the middle with this trailer. I know you probably can't talk about it, but is there more of you working with Naughty Dog to come, or anything?
I'm very afraid of Sony's NDAs.
Sure. Fair enough.
Maybe anything about that, but I would say that I very much enjoy working with them and on that, and definitely would like to work on the futures.
Sure. I mean, I'm
I don't have, because I don't know what I can say. But
no, that's fine. I don't want anybody. I don't want anybody showing up at your door with a silenced.
It was another crazy thing for me too, because like, I'm a huge Nine Inch Nails fan, obviously, huge Pearl Jam fan, and then I hadn't really worked even video games much, but a lot of video games. You asked me like, oh, if you want to work with somebody making video games today, who would it be? I'd be like, oh, obviously Naughty Dog, and you'll talk. And then that's like, it was nuts. So yeah, I mean, that was, and it was because he saw the Pearl Jam show in Vancouver. They were filming, and he loved the visuals, and said, this is the kind of thing we are thinking about for this game we're making. And then it all kind of it worked out. And then when I met with their team and had signed all the something, he was like, so I think you might know the guys who were doing the soundtrack. No, it's all. If someone tells me that they're doing a dancing bait,
that's it. It's going to be in the game. It's going to be hidden in Intergalactic.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume that Druckmann's probably around our age, and it makes sense that all of these things kind of come together, because, when you're growing up at the time we grew up, it's like you're a fan of this, you're a fan of this, like you might like this. And, what he did with video games, I mean, with Last of Us and Last of Us 2, I don't think I've ever played anything or experienced a story that I've been horrified and enjoyed as much as I have with those two games.
Yeah, I mean, I remember saying at the time, Last of Us 2 was the best movie that I played that year, and I was genuinely a little bit nervous about them doing a show of it. Well, only because I'm like, well, how do you do it without just how do you do it in a way that feels complimentary without, because you've already done it in a lot of ways. And hearing that he was going to be directly involved with the show I was like, okay, they'll figure it out, and they did. So I mean, it's amazing. And then there's but it's just wild, because there's Pearl Jam references in the game,
in the game, the show,
stuff like that. So yeah, it's very much at the center of, and then of course the new game Intergalactic. It's like when they told me about the aesthetic, the retro future, because stuff, you're just like, hello,
you're living in it.
There's a whole other aspect of the texture of my being. So it's really cool to be able to play in all these playgrounds that sort of like feel like they're coming full circle. I mean, to your point of like being the same age, same background to some extent, it's like there was a monoculture of sorts back then. Where there's only so many pipelines, right? And if you were tuned into a certain, angle of the pipelines, you would inevitably get similar types of things coming.
Yeah.
You know, not the world just not the world that programmable, but it was just a matter of like there are only so many ways you can get the media. You didn't have this infinite thing, and you tended to be like, if you were a certain type of person, like we were, you part of the reason you're so attached to media is because you had to really find more of it
Yeah.
outside of the mainstream, outside of what was being fed, and so you kind of had a sort of identity around breaking out of the mainstream because it was the only way to tangibly find more of the type of stuff you liked. It wasn't going to come to you, you know.
Yeah.
And, so there's definitely like, it's really interesting to see all the threads overlap, and I also say especially because I think, you know, at some point I want to do something for kids media or whatever, but having a kid right now, it's really a golden age to have waited to be a parent because all of the stuff that's out there for little kids is being made by people our age. So they're bringing back all the, you know, during literally, I swear, no effort of my kid's favorite stuff is like, he loves Ninja Turtles, you know, he loves Nightmare Before Christmas, Mario, you know, all the stuff that was like literally be, happy stuff, like Ghostbusters he's really into, like all this stuff is like 80s kid things because his friends next door into it, and it's what's popular. It's Star Wars, all that stuff. It's not even like their parents are like forcing them to play with old toys. It's like literally just what is organically popular amongst kids now because the older people making the stuff want to go back to their
we want to enjoy it.
It's a great, you know, 20 and 30 year rotation of culture, which is kind of cool.
Oh, and it just blew my mind that you said Turtles. I'm like, well, who did the music for the last Turtles movie? Shit's insane. You know, I think about things like that, Rob. If you would have told 12-year-old Dave that Trent Reznor was going to be making music for a Turtles movie and it would kick ass, I'd be like, nah, you're on crack.
I know, right? I know. Well, there's a lot of stuff like that that's just funny to look at and be like, that would have made no sense. You said about this. But and what's also interesting is to see how many musicians and bands, you know, who came up for rock music and other kinds of music are now doing stuff for kids media because inevitably they have kids, and then they're like, okay, well, yeah, I'll do that. So like, you start to realize like, oh, like so many of the themes and things are done by like musicians that I know, and mostly because they're just at the age now where they've did that, so it's fun for them to make music for the things that, you know, that are going on to another generation.
And they have either vocally or just musically, they have a recognizable voice in that. And that helps other parents that are that age identify with that and then show it to their kids.
For sure. Yeah.
So that definitely helps. Okay. Last thing I'm going to talk about, I'm going to mention, because we started with the internet memes and stuff. It is the 5-year anniversary of a thing that you did that sent shockwaves through Reddit and a lot of movie sites when you took mushrooms and went to go see Cats.
Oh, it is the 5-year. Wow.
Yeah. I remember that because I follow you on social media, but I remember seeing that catch wildfire on Reddit and then kind of go through the media. This guy live tweets his experience seeing this movie on mushrooms.
That's right. Yeah. Wow. And it was my friend Scott Wampler, who rest in peace, ran the first movie's death, and you know, would always like update me like this because that was where I originally did the interview about it after the fact, and it was like this was like our most popular post until the site finally went out. I was like the number one most. I like couldn't believe it. It was just how it spread all over the internet. I think it was just the perfect way for people to connect with the strange way that movie made them feel.
Yeah.
So the perfect way to experience it through someone else.
Exactly. And an experience that just gets like, it just escalates till it, it just gets worse and worse. But it just goes to show that, you're able to make a pioneering internet thing every generation.
I guess somehow it just keeps happening. So I'm not even not even like an influencer or anything. It just every now and just happened to intersect with the zeitgeist in weird ways. But yeah, that was really funny. Also the last time I did mushrooms.
There, yeah, I don't
Like, the last time I saw cats.
Well, I mean, in a real honest way, overall, all of this that we've talked about, it kind of just speaks to the fact that your unique perspective as an artist or as a mushroom taker or a dancing baby fan, or a Nine Inch Nails, fan, whatever it is, like your perspective makes people pay attention. And I just really appreciated. I can speak for friends that I have that also follow your work. It's very much appreciated of being just somebody who has a unique perspective that shares it with us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and like I said, that's what means the most to me. I connect with people in some way, and I think a lot of what, especially the Nine Inch Nails fan that people have followed me for a long time. I think the fact that I started as a fan and just continued to to be grounded in that and have that as part of me is kind of part of how I look through everything, how I interact with people and see everything, and I try to carry that perspective with me openly, I guess, because I think you never lose it, but I think some artists try too hard to hide it, perhaps, or that they're as all of this, or as imposter syndrome, or was struck by it, or that I don't know how to explain what I'm saying, but there's a groundedness that I think plays better in today's world than so I think some people weren't able to really get past this idea that you had to be above it all. You had to maintain some you're disconnected from the human experience in order to be an artist or whatever, and it might work for some people, but I don't know how to do it. I came from much more connected to the audience route, and that's important to me.
Yeah, I think it speaks to fandom and community and just wanting to be around like-minded people that are into that thing. And you've helped create that. And I want to give a plug to the Patreon, the Discord, and Instagram, 3 places that you can find more of Rob and his art, get free stuff like wallpapers, as you see on the screen here. And you do a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Like you said, you broke down a lot of the Pearl Jam tour as well as the With Teeth anniversary stuff. So all those links will be available in the description for this.
Yeah, when you let's see if I can do this. When you first turned on this chat and the wallpaper came up, I thought, did I have screen sharing on or something? Because you can see it right behind me, the exact same wallpaper.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a nice little added. I like to, because I invite people on this podcast that I'm a fan of. So I want to show everybody the things that comes from your body of work, or if it's a comic artist.
No, that's cool. That freaked me out at first. How's my screen on his? But I remember. But people are like it's cool that you actually use your own wallpapers. I'm like, I make them for me. I make t-shirts I want to wear and make wallpapers I want to put on the thing. I'm just glad other people also
yeah.
I don't know, making it for other people, and then gotta wear my own stuff. I'm like, no, I made this because I want to wear it. It's rad that you want to though.
Anything else to promote, or anything else coming out, or people should look for besides the Patreon, Discord, and Instagram?
I am kind of not at announce a project point.
Sure.
Now that something's cooking, but I do in these times in between big things, or while I'm preparing for big things or whatever, I make prints. I regularly release new
Right.
print, wallpaper packs, all the stuff you mentioned. I have this VHS set that I made. It's cool for people who like that stuff, and just check out the little things I make. That's what keeps my brain going all the time.
Yeah, glitch goods and the prints and all that stuff. And, just also want to say thanks for all of the money that you've helped raise for all the different causes that you're backing over the last, career.
Oh, yeah.
It's always nice to see people doing good things.
I try. It's
Yeah.
it makes it feel. It's just that if you're lucky if you can ever do something you love for money, or like to live on. I mean, but it really feels lucky to then also be able to do it in a way that impacts or makes things
Sure.
better for people, and that's kind of just all you can do sometimes. Get by, just like finding your community. It's like finding your own way of making things look better.
Thanks for listening to that interview with Rob Sheridan. You can find all of his links in the description, whether you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple or watching it on YouTube. He's got a Patreon, a Discord, Instagram, a Threadless shop, all the places you can get neat stuff like this. And I just really super appreciate his point of view on things and just hearing his stories and the parallels that we have because we are the same age, and the things that we grew up loving and the ways that we viewed the internet and grew into it and all that. It's just such a fun conversation and such a delightful person to talk to. If you really enjoyed this podcast and you're not subscribed, I am asking you, please do, because this path that I am on is interviewing all of the people that I would call inspirations or heroes or whatever the adjective you want to use is. I want to bring these people on my podcast and have conversations with them. If you're listening on Spotify and Apple, you can like and you can also rate the podcast. You can leave a comment on Spotify. You can leave a word review on Apple, and on YouTube, you can hit the like button. You can comment, and you can also subscribe. So we are nearing the end of the season, but there's still more to come. So please join me next week on Direct Edition. Listen to the episodes you might have missed. I super appreciate it. Anything you can do to help me get this podcast out to more people is super important to me. This has been another episode of Direct Edition, a podcast about nothing and everything. And I'll see you next week. No, that sounded terrible. And I'll see you next week. Peace. That also sounds terrible. Whatever, just end the podcast.